van, really. And of course, the Dagon driver, the S6 actually has a car on those, which is why they need to do the wheel. thing you need in a farmyard was the means of driving things.
Okay, so next thing coming in the arena, with our parade of miniature steam. Not model steam, model steam you can make out of plastic, wood, whatever. No, this is miniature steam. This is the real thing, writ large, writ small. Yeah, the full-size one's a bit large. And when they come around the arena here, of course, this is idling away, not doing very much work at all. These little engines, on the other hand, don't do a bit of work because, okay, this speed is reasonably flat. Some of them we have are very rough indeed. You get these little tiny engines coming around with the owner sitting on the back, representing quite a large load on some of them, and yet they're going around the arena without any trouble whatsoever. All the power is at very low level. So it's maximum boiler pressure. Okay? Here we go. So we have a real good, very good amount of drive. Something which has given children a great deal of pleasure over the years suddenly disappeared from view. So if you've got a Mammoth engine at home, hang on to it because the price is going to go up through the roof over time. It'll take a little while, but the price will go up over the roof, through the roof over time. Now we have a half-size showman's engine coming down. Half-size? Yeah, well, don't forget, it's half the width, half the height, and half the length. So it fills a quarter of the volume. If you go the other way and you make engines a little bit bigger, so you make 16 inches to the foot instead of 12, you end up with this absolutely enormous engine. it gets very silly indeed. But these engines are remarkably powerful. There was a story of one situation where they were using a full-size engine to put out the hedge, and eventually the hedge went off behind a row of bungalows and they couldn't get the full-size engine in there, but they got a half-size of the same design of engine. So we'll do it with the model. With the miniature. So they've often got the miniature, fired it up, and it was putting the hedge out without any trouble whatsoever. Why have you got extended chimneys on the top? Well, it's difficult, as I said, to get a fire to burn when it's very, very small. Also, if you're sitting there in the backdraft at the top of the chimney, it can give you something of a headache, I have to say, with the steam coming back off the boiler. They're built in exactly the same way that the full-size engines are built. They've got the tubular boilers, they've got the fireboxes, the copper fireboxes, the oilers. The whole thing is done exactly the same way it would be done on a full-size engine. You end up with this absolutely enormous engine. One situation where they were using a full-size engine to put out a hedge, and eventually with small gravel, or large gravel at the bottom, you gradually work up to this small gravel at the top, anything larger than an inch and a half is regarded as mischievous. And you should have a ditch either side of the road to drain the water away, and the centre of the road should be higher than the outside, which is why they're called highways. Oh, there's the thing. But of course, once you start getting tarmac roads and concrete roads, solid wheels, solid steel wheels, it gives you a very rough ride indeed. So a lot of the full-size engines got rubber tyres put on. You'll see some of the full-size engines we have here this weekend have got solid tyres, and some of them have pneumatic tyres. You find that the dates don't quite match. You find that the older ones sometimes have got pneumatic tyres and the younger ones haven't. The reason for that was that they go back for a rebuild at some point and they say, well, do you want to put pneumatic tyres on this whilst you're having it done? They say yes, because it's a stuff to buy. We have a over-type steam wagon coming in here. Again, this is good for you. It's called an over-type because the motion work is on top of the boiler, exactly the same way that a traction engine is. And then, of course, there's the under-type, where the engine is actually under the chassis, in much the same way as they had the four-cylinder diesel buses back in the 1960s with an engine underneath the bus. This wasn't a new idea. It had been done by steam for years. In fact, I had a full-size engine sitting there one day, one of these lorries with a type engine, and a diesel engineer came up to me and he said, well, when's the ignition? I said, pardon? He said, well, when's the ignition? I said, well, it's when you find the matches in the morning, that's when the ignition happens. Another half-size machine coming around here. It doesn't mean it has half the power of the original. Oh no. Ministers coming down with a wagon on the back, water cart. Some of them would have a living van. We had a guy at one of the rallies, he had made a complete ploughing set. And ploughing engines have a lot more gearing, a lot more business going on underneath. But you've got the big winch for putting the plough from one side of the field to the other. And he had two ploughing engines. He then built the plough, the water cart and the living van, and he said he wasn't an engineer. And it ran those two engines ran the streets. Like anybody who thought they were an engineer who could do that, I think they're wrong. I think they were really good engineers, thank you very much. Yes, they were used for hauling heavy loads. You have one here with a tank on the back. There are photographs of the full-size ones taking the way to get from one side of the Pennines to the other. Enormous propeller stuck in a trailer on the back of these things going across, which of course they were originally taken out to Belfast to fit on the Titanic. The little Foden omnibus coming into the arena now. Mascall's the boilermakers. They built 6 of these things, but if you're going to set up to make models or miniatures, whatever, you might as well. All the work you put in. If you're setting up to make one, you might as well set up to make 2. Mascall's made 6 little engines like this one coming around at the moment, and one of them was done up as a coach, and it was done up as a coach as the Foden Motorworks band, if you remember the early days. The Bedfordshire Motorworks band, and they were travelling around the countryside in a steam-driven omnibus, similar to this one that's coming around the arena right now. Coleman's Mustard, beautifully sign written with Coleman's Mustard logo on the side. Tried to get a bit of sponsorship from Coleman's Mustard. They weren't interested. Oh, no, we never use steam transport. We only use the railways, so they wouldn't do it. Now, wouldn't you have thought, having an engine done in that beautiful sign writing, all the rest of it, you'd been willing to put a little bit of money behind it. So they got free advertising anyway. Got one here with another engine on a trailer on the back. It's not a problem. It really isn't a problem. Steam traction is something quite different to the internal combustion engine. Used to. They have a very limited torque range, but steam engine goes from 0 up to maximum without any problem whatsoever. Come up against the steam engine, if you're sitting at the traffic lights and you've got a steam engine beside you, it will beat you away from the lights for about the first 3 feet. After that it gets a bit dodgy, but the acceleration is amazing. Now here's an interesting one. Holly Rover's coming around with a couple of trailers, got a living van, miniature living van on the back. And of course in the days when there was steam ploughing going on, you'd have had 2 ploughing engines, a cultivator, a plough, a living van, a water cart. And they've been travelling around the countryside doing contract ploughing for the farmers who couldn't afford to own their own engine. So you do contract ploughing, and they would go home at weekends, and they would come back in, and they're living the living van throughout the week. They're doing the ploughing. We had a miniature steam omnibus come around, a tiny one, about 4 each. Here's a half-sized one, which you wouldn't have any trouble whatsoever with travelling around in, would you really? This one is from Mascall's. You may be wondering why have the engine sitting there slowly ticking over. What's that all about? Why would you run the engine all the time? Well, it's to keep the cylinder warm, actually. That's the idea. If you let the engine stand for any length of time. With a bright yellow dress on, Kathy helm, and this engine now having a totally cold cylinder of just a warm cylinder, took off and a great gout of water shot up in the air from the front that went down all over, and she stood there, this bright yellow dress now covered in black smoke. That engine's been sick all over me. Well, of course, the costume department being well up with this sort of thing. I've got about 6 spare yellow dresses anyway, because they knew very well what's going to happen, so she had to go and change. But that's why we have engines sitting there ticking over. There's logic to it somewhere. There are some coming in now. And there was this, some years ago, one of the full-size drivers went to that and changed what his engine said. Said, I need some links for my engine. I said, oh, well, how many links do you need? He said, oh, so many, blah, blah, blah. What size is it? Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, we have those in stock. They still had the traction engine chains in stock. And you managed to get a replacement chain. One of the problems with the full-size ones nowadays is wearing gears. Of course, the original gears were made from wooden patterns, tap castings basically. But a lot of them are getting quite noisy now, carrying one another, big load behind, and a fair amount of cooperation required, going up and down hills and all the rest of it. We've got
good fun with it, and it's opened up an awful lot of doors.
I imagine it has, because you don't normally see one of these floating around too much, do you?
Do you see 5 in a ring at once?
Yeah. Okay, he's got them to get off. Okay. They'll come from something else. Thank you very much, right? That's pretty good. Oh, yes, we'll do it again tomorrow. Definitely just. Oh dear. And then the ring told me, no, it's not that horse's car. Whereas Stanley said, well, no, that's the model. So coming up very shortly in the main arena, we have the main commercial and military vehicles. And let's follow. case, should you find it, could you bring it across to Peter Control? We get it back to the owners. One, I can't remember.
It's so blue.
It's so blue, that's right. Land Rovers come in all shapes and sizes, and they're a Meccano set because you can build up damn near anything. Started off with the end of World War II, and they wanted to get back into car production again. They got a Jeep. On our table, the kitchen, and basically drew up the Land Rover. What we're going to make it out of? Well, steel's in short supply, but we made it two main bits. Oh, we got all that vermiculite in the store, which they've been making aircraft putting through, and along came the Land Rover. And magically the Series 1, but it wasn't the Series 1 then, was it? I think we're going to make Series 2.
It's a 2A, 1966, and for 25 years. And she's just done.
It only runs on petrol, everything else runs on diesel. Can you make a diesel version? Which they did at that time. Had to extend the pump by 2 inches to get diesel. Oh well. And on they go. Civil Defence as a water pump. The idea was that if we had a nuclear disaster or whatever, you'd have a whole string of these, and they pump for so far. And you go into a pound tank, then the next one would suck it up in the pound tank, pump it on a bit further, and you could go right across the country from one side to the other. They were used as fire engines in extremis. You can use a garden hose as a fire hose if you want to, but it's not what it's for. So tell us about this one.
It's a 1957. We've got 5,000 miles on the clock from new. That's about all I know about it.
Yeah, but basically the story I've told you is, yeah, okay, you can use a fire engine, but it's not what it's for. A Unimog. Oh, now these things are amazing. If you want to move anything, you get one of these. Tell us about it.
It's 1979.
So didn't they start off with a centre driving position and the steering wheel was